Hello and welcome to the CSN3M Mindset Monday podcast. I'm Andrew Wade with Case Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on the 3M's: mindsets, myth busting, and mentoring, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. Today's episode, we're going to have a little bit of a different spin on things. We've now, believe it or not, we are almost a year into our Mindset Monday podcast. I can't believe we're rapidly approaching episode 50 every week, every Monday. And as that's happened, we've developed quite a great audience. So I want to first thank everybody that's been listening and sharing the podcast. We've been really excited that we've been getting such good feedback and also able to, reach out and help a lot of different people. And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted to take a step into case-specific nutrition a little bit, because we do some certain services and we have some interventions that we utilize that I think might be worth making people aware of, but then also I want to use that as an opportunity to educate about some topics that are currently trendy and popular. And so today, the one that I wanted to discuss in the terms of case-specific nutrition services is the genetic testing. And that's in part because I've had quite a few people actually through the podcast end up on our website and email us and ask about the genetic testing. On our website, under the product section, there's an emerging tests section, and we talk about the genetic testing as well as some of the lab-based testing that we do. And so I wanted to give a little bit of background on the genetic testing that we offer, why we offer it, why we don't offer others, and then some of the considerations that we use when we actually administer the tests and how we utilize them for clients that use them. So first and foremost, genetic testing is not something we use for all of our clients. It's not something that's used in every case or every session. It's still very much an emerging test, which is why it's listed as such on our website. There is some very interesting and exciting data. And in earlier episodes, I believe episodes 20 and 21, I discussed some of the future of nutritional genomics and how that is becoming an increasingly relevant conversation. As it stands now, it is still in its infancy, and we are still doing a lot of research to better understand how genetics and our nutrition interact and what that means for us as humans and our health and wellness. But there are certain aspects of it that are becoming increasingly knowledgeable, and also as a result increasingly useful in those that are seeking to really understand their body and themselves very well. So we utilize a group called Genetic Direction at Case Specific. I have looked at about 12 different companies that do genetic testing over the years. Every time I hear about a new one, I go in and look. And my biggest concern and my biggest caution to all of you out there that are interested in doing genetic testing is recognizing that we are still at a point of correlation when it comes to genetic testing. And so what that means is when we're researching it, we are basically just looking at people who have certain traits or problems or tendencies, and then we're looking at the genetic profile that the individual has. And if there's a correlation or a high likelihood that a lot of people have a certain genetic tendency for one gene, and a lot of those people have a higher incidence or a higher prevalence of, a certain trait that's being investigated, that's called a correlation, which means they seem to be similar, but it's not guaranteed. And so at base, what we need to be on the lookout for is this is the starting point of research. We look for correlation, and then once we find correlation, we then look to try and prove causation through really higher quality trials and studies, most of which have not really been done in any significant way at this point in time. And so when you look at genetic tests, most of what you're looking at is some correlations that have existed in a study that they are then saying and trying to extrapolate to the general public. And so my biggest concern in genetic testing is how many studies were done and how generalizable or representative was the sample of those studies in an attempt. And so what I like about Genetic Direction is it doesn't attempt to overstep its bounds. And what I mean by that is, in its actual sample and report, the traits that are being investigated, most of them have a great deal of research. So for example, we're going to dig into one of the ones we do pretty often. And in that one, there's an investigation of how your body utilizes macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And just the fat utilization alone has 14 studies that genetic direction utilizes. And what I love is that in the report they give, they actually link all of the studies. And so you can go on the links and actually see the PubMed trials and see what they are. But then what I love even further is in their report, they actually give you strengths and limitations of each trait. And so, for example, there's a trait that isn't very well researched at this point that they actually mention in the summary report, and they say at this time there's only been 2 trials done, and most of the studies were done on the Asian population and in females. So this may not be representative to the sample population that is all humans, right? Men, this might not be relevant to you. And since we haven't tested this outside of a specific, area of the world, this may not actually translate to cultures, and it might not translate across races. And so it's a really, really transparent way to utilize the research. And I really appreciate that, because there are a lot of genetic testing companies out there that are currently being sued heavily for trying to overstep and trying to make claims that you can't make with correlation, and trying to extrapolate and provide information to everybody when they may only have a little bit of correlation or overlap on a small segment of a population. If you do a study on 12 people, you can't say that that is fact for millions of people. And so, once again, what I like about genetic direction is that they actually they stick mostly to traits that are actually very well researched and have a great deal of correlation and repetitive studies, so that we can see, oh, this is happening time and time again. This isn't just a fluke. This is happening all across the world in different labs on different people, and which is once again doesn't prove causation, but does give us some more confidence in that correlation. And I do appreciate that they're transparent about the limitations within the study itself. And so within theirs, they offer 3 tests. And we use the one that's called GX Slim, which is actually basically a metabolism-based test. And what it assesses is the body's basically ability to adapt to caloric intake and energy expense. It investigates utilization of nutrients like protein, fat, and carbs. It investigates the tendency of an individual to be deficient or malabsorb certain key vitamins and minerals that are relevant to metabolism. And then it also investigates exercise dynamics, including how the body responds to cardiovascular training in terms of fitness and in terms of energy utilization, how it responds in terms of body composition, how it responds in terms of insulin response and glucose and HDL, all of which would be our cholesterol and our insulin and blood sugar-based pathways in the system. So it really gives us a good overview of how our genetics might be playing a role in us as individuals when we are exercising, eating, moving, and so what are some of the issues that our body might, or obstacles our body might encounter, that we want to be on the lookout for. And I've used this test in the past to do quite a few things with people, which is one, help kind of better determine or customize exercise programming. We've used it to adjust the balance of nutrients in a diet. We've used it to then assess and do a micronutrient panel. And if we see that the individual's deficient in one of the nutrients that they have a below average tendency in, we know that they need to take higher dosage of that nutrient, or maybe even an activated version of that nutrient, so that they can actually get the values that they want. So there's a lot of really interesting opportunity within genetic testing, and it really is just getting started. It's like I said, it's in its infancy. 5 years ago, most genetic tests were absolutely garbage, to be perfectly honest, but it was a very exciting time. I waited a couple of years to start offering this one. Once I found it, I was very excited about it. And once again, it's not something that I recommend for all people, or we recommend as a company for all people, but it is a tool that we use, and it has been very valuable. One of the main reasons I've found it to be valuable is actually in debunking fad diets and what I would almost call like psychological barriers to eating, where I've had clients that come into my office and because of the environment that we live in, they're afraid of carbohydrates. And based on my investigations with them and initial consult with them, I get a feeling that their body would really benefit from utilizing carbohydrates, for example. And so then we do the genetic test, and lo and behold, it shows that they are above average or enhanced for carb utilization, and they've been fearing carbohydrates even though they're a physically active and metabolically balanced person. And so once again, it helps them then trust their body, give their body a fair chance at fueling, and kind of break through that psychological barrier. And so from those that have been having tricky metabolisms and are looking to better understand their body, to those that are having a psychological barrier and are looking for a way to prove their mind wrong in a more positive way, this test has been extremely valuable. The way we do it at our office, it is something that is administered very easily. That we have kits in our offices in stock, and the kit is just a cheek swab, and so we administer them in the office. We have to go into our portal. We ask a couple questions. The genetic direction collects a little bit of data relating to diet and exercise and medical history. Nothing extremely detailed, things like back pain and certain things like that. And then we administer the cheek swab, and it does 10 swabs on the left side, 10 swabs on the right side of the inside of the cheek. And then we put it in the capsule, put it in the protected bag, and then we put it in the mailing bag, and then we drop it in the mail. And about 3 weeks later, we get a full response, which includes the summary report that gives the overview of about 25 different tendencies. And then it gives us the full report, which explains each tendency in detail. And then it also gives sample exercise recommendations, sample eating and recipes, and it gives what people get very excited about, their genetic data, which is the actual overarching genetic profile of each individual human, which you can then take and go and do 23andMe or any of the other companies out there and do the genetic testing that is not specific to nutrition or wellness, but might be more related to other aspects. And because you have your genetic data, they charge or do a really, really big discount. And so it's kind of a neat thing. We really do enjoy doing it in-house. It costs us just under $250, and so with credit card and all that in mind, we charge a flat rate $250 for each test, and that's part of the reason why we do not recommend it or have everybody do it. We want to make sure there's value in it because it is an out-of-pocket cost. People that have flex spending accounts and medical debit accounts can use those. And to be fair, what I'm most excited about is when I first started offering them, they charged $400. So they've been coming down in price as genetic testing is becoming more common. And my dream is that in the next couple of years, we get to a point where we have much better correlation for many more traits. And then we're starting to actually get some proof of causation. And then more importantly, we actually are getting to a point where the tests are financially accessible for all people. But in the meantime, this is a test that we have available. Within the genetic direction family, there's a couple others for performance that look at VO2 max and certain tendencies with stress and inflammation and body recovery, which is really neat. And then there's one called Renew, which has some really exciting concepts in what's called the look, feel, function, which is kind of how the body responds to aging overall. But this one is still a very preliminary test, and so it's one that we don't really utilize often because the data is 1 and 2 studies per trait, which is just not something that is going to be worth us making a recommendation on or really even considering from a recommendation standpoint. It's interesting, it's exciting, but it might not be clinically valid at this time. So the genetic direction family, I appreciate their transparency, and we really do enjoy doing these with our clients just to give, again, more positive information so that people can better understand themselves, because we do live in a world where self-interest exists, and we can, nudge that and encourage that in a positive way. If you're interested in learning more about it or you want to do a genetic direction test with us, you can feel free to reach out to us on the Case Specific Nutrition website. You can email our admin. We do prefer that patients come in for appointments so that we can actually get the appropriate background, and we prefer to do them in the actual offices. We have mailed tests in the past and are able to do so if needed. And so if there is a distance, someone who is not nearby that is interested in doing it, we can mail it to you and we can walk you through it in a virtual consultation as well. So there is opportunity to do it in person and virtually at this time through our consultations, and we pair it with a dietitian visit so that you can optimize everything and go through the information and better understand what you're actually reading. Thanks again for listening. For those of you interested in genetic testing, I think the key is to make sure that the genetic test you're doing is transparent about the research it's based on and isn't just giving you information based on one study of 12 people. Genetics will be developing in the next 5 to 10 years, and I have no doubt there will be improvements, and case-specific nutrition is going to do everything we can to stay on the cutting edge and front lines of that so that we can provide the most clinically relevant but also most up-to-date information. Once again, thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or a loved one that might be interested in the topic discussed. When you share it, please hashtag spread the health on social media so that you can do your part in us trying to make an impact in people's lives for the better. For more case-specific nutrition content, you can follow us on all social media at Case-Specific Nutrition and check out our website, casespecificnutrition.com. We will be back next week with another CSN3M Mindset Monday.